have our next guest, Curtis Cost, is co-producer and also is in the film Medical Racism. We're looking at long-standing experimentation by the medical community, medical institutions on Black communities. Curtis joins us by phone from Los Angeles, I assume. Curtis, how are you doing?
Fine, thank you. I'm actually in New York.
You're in New York now? Okay, got it. Okay, good to know. Thanks so much for that. And I apologize for... okay, absolutely. So, talk to us about this film, Medical Racism. Medical Racism, the New Apartheid. It premiered not too long ago, actually last week, and right. Folks can find the trailer on YouTube. Where is that film available now? Can people go to a specific website and watch it in its entirety? Where can we get it?
You just go to Children's Health Defense. If you can just type that into Google, you'll find Children's Health Defense. And also, we have also a Facebook page, and on the home page, you'll be able to find it. And you just click into it, and it's free.
Okay. childrenshealthdefense.org.
.org, yeah. Or if you just type Children's Health Defense, it'll still come up. But childrenshealthdefense.org, yes, you can find it.
Okay, got it. How long have you all been putting this film together? What was the inspiration behind the film? What prompted you to do the film in the first place? Were you pulling it together during pandemic, or is this something that's been worked on for quite some time, even before that happened?
No, this is during the pandemic. We were, time frame wise, I think we were working on about 6 months, I guess. And one of the motivations is that we think people need to be informed that we cannot afford to be naive with regards to the medical establishment.
Right.
There's a long history of deliberate experimentation on African people in America and Caribbean and Africa and other parts of the world, and with other groups. I mean, while there's a horrific history of things they've done to African people around the world, they've done a lot of bad things to other groups as well. But right now, the focus is on what they've been doing to us, and we need to be aware, especially when they're asking us to naively trust this COVID vaccine.
Got it. Well, first, before I get into that, let me talk about, kind of walk us through the film and what it is. And actually, the director is David Massey of this documentary. Walk us through it and talk to us about the history that it walks us through. What are you showing? What are some of those key kind of flashpoints in history where we've seen that kind of racism inflicted, especially particularly on Black communities?
Sure. I mean, the film covers various time frames going back to slavery and modern atrocities. I mean, it covers the atrocities where this doctor performed gynecological surgeries on Black female slaves, and with no anesthesia, and it was diabolical. I mean, any kind of surgery without anesthesia is diabolical. And he did this, and he was considered, still is, to my knowledge, considered the father of gynecology. Unfortunately, recently, statue they had up for him in New York was taken down. And so, going all the way back to slavery, we have things like that. And we look at the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, where the Center for Disease Control, the same agency encouraging Black folks to go take the COVID vaccine, they allowed the terrific Tuskegee syphilis experiment to go on for decades. That these men believed that they were being treated for syphilis when they were not. The doctors were just allowing it to progress, and they wanted to see what would happen. And the end result was that the men involved in the experiment, many of them ended up dying. They spread it to their girlfriends. They spread it to their children. And the only thing that stopped that was a whistleblower who took the information to Ted Kennedy, and Ted had a hearing, and he's the one who brought that to an end. So the same institution, the Center for Disease Control, that wants us to take this COVID vaccine and was behind this diabolical experiment. And we have others. I don't want to give too much away, but I think
No, and I'm very familiar with that history too, and I think it's I do think it's necessary that we have to revisit that history. We have to highlight. We have to constantly keep in mind, because you had that level of medical abuse, medical racism, that violence against Black communities. That's been going on for a long time. That even happens on a just basic physician-patient level, right? Where medical doctors, nurses continue to undertreat or misdiagnose, or sometimes blatantly don't consider the pain of a Black patient. So, I've always kind of reminded people, hey, listen, we suddenly have to jump in, and as we're getting tested and treated for coronavirus, we have to kind of also maintain a side eye on those medical institutions. I have to ask you, though, you say the same CDC, but it's not the same CDC. We have the CDC in 2021. And don't you think that, since the Tuskegee experiment, and now we have all that transparency around events like the Tuskegee experiment, or even, the concern over, and now more transparency, the exposure of what happened with Henrietta Lacks and Marion Sims. Don't we now, we have a level of transparency. It's not perfect, but I would suspect that these sorts of experiments, or some of these sorts of experiments, would not happen again. Because the CDC understands that eyes are on them, that kind of scrutiny is on them. So I wouldn't think that a Tuskegee experiment would happen again. I just wonder about that statement, the same CDC.
Well, the fact is that we can document all types of atrocities up to the present time, including the whistleblower case at the CDC. I believe he hit the year 2004. So one of the...
No, that was in 2004. Now we're in 2021. That's still a far ways away.
Well, let me finish, okay? Well, where the CDC, and he still works there, knew that the measles...
But he's a whistleblower, and he still works at the CDC, and this was a case back in 2000.
Still works at William Thompson, right. He exposed the fact that they discovered that the measles vaccine caused autism in Black boys at 300% greater.
Yeah, but let me, Curtis, all due respect, there was that I remember that research that came out back in like the late 90s, that was thoroughly examined and debunked that, about this linkage between vaccines and autism. There's like just no scientific evidence showing that there's widespread autism cases because of vaccines. That's been thoroughly debunked.
No, it's not. In fact,
how's it not? That wasn't even peer reviewed. That particular study that sparked this and triggered all this from 1998 was not even peer reviewed by the scientific community. That was the first thing that they found out. That was the first red flag.
Do you want me to speak?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I'm also the author of the book Vaccines Are Dangerous, The Warnings of the Global Community. The first edition of my book came out in 1992, and the second edition 2010. So I've been active on the vaccine issue for about 30 years. And I have a detailed chapter in my book on the subject of autism, and I can tell you that the claim...
But has that been peer reviewed? Has that been peer reviewed by other people in the scientific community? Has your research been peer reviewed? By who? By who? Who was that peer reviewed by?
Okay, just let me finish talking for a second, okay? My book is endorsed by doctors and scientists.
Who are those doctors and scientists? Who are those medical institutions?
Sure, not a problem. One of them is Dr. Roberto Giraldo, MD, specialist in internal medicine. He wrote, Mr. Carson's book, Vaccines Are Dangerous, encourages readers to investigate the real intentions behind the campaign to vaccinate everybody against the 2009 swine flu. Dr. Bruce Pookrum, MD. This book is beaming with love and brilliance. We have
let me ask this, Curtis. Let me ask this though. There's two big questions I have here. One is, if there is this effort or this big conversation, which I'm going to be upfront with you, I think is highly irresponsible. I think it defies all basic public health protocols. It does, because we're in the middle of a pandemic. Let me ask you, what other alternative is there? This is what I ask a lot of people about this. What other alternative is there to a regular? We can't send our kids to school without a booster shot or without a vaccine. So what other plan do you have, or the people you work with have, besides a vaccine? Like, how do you get through the pandemic? You must have a strategy for that.
Well, I mean, the film is designed to encourage people to start investigating the biases in the medical establishment up to the present, and it brings the atrocities up to the present.
Yeah, now, that aspect I agree with. I agree. I think you should do that. But are you discouraging people? I get a feeling from this conversation and the tone of this film, you're discouraging people from doing what they have to do and taking a vaccine. I mean, can we talk about that medical racism without discouraging people from getting through this pandemic, through ending the pandemic? That's my big question mark there. I think you should highlight what's happened in history. I think that shouldn't preclude people from participating in ending the pandemic. Correct?
Well, if you let me talk and not cut me off, I guarantee I will respond. With regards to the pandemic, I mean, there are a lot of questions about how much of a pandemic it really is, because we have over 99%.
How is there questions about how much pandemic it is, Curtis? Wait a second. Well, you've got over nearly 530,000. We actually are about to surpass the amount of people who died in the 1918 influenza pandemic. We have 530,000 people dead that we know of. We might have already surpassed it. I don't understand it. You have to help me.
Okay,
help me compute that.
Or do you want me as a guest?
No, go ahead. But I mean, the types of claims and statements that you're making, I'm having some issues with.
Okay, well, I can't. You allow me about 20 seconds to speak.
Go ahead, answer it. Answer it.
Well, in terms of my personal feelings on it, the facts are clear. The only ones who really died from COVID are the very old, in the late 70s, early 80s, who already have cancer and diabetes, things of that nature.
Okay, all right. Curtis, I'm going to, Curtis. This was great. I wanted to talk about the history of medical racism. I don't want to spread doubt. I can't do it. I've got to let you go. I cannot. I have an obligation here to the audience. And I also have an obligation to, and I appreciate you coming on. Jordan, we got to cut this conversation because I can't. There's beyond all doubt, there is a raging, deadly, genocidal pandemic that we're all in the midst of, that we have to respond and react to. There can't be any doubt at all about what it is we're in the midst of and what it is we have to respond to. And it's irresponsible of me to keep this conversation going. Curtis, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you highlighting the history. There's other aspects of the conversation I don't appreciate. I'm sorry. Let's take a break, and then when we come back on the other side, we'll take phone calls. 215-634-8065, toll-free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
Recovery starts with a call. Pennsylvania's Substance Use Disorder Hotline is staffed by real people who are trained to help. They're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They'll get you or your loved one into treatment regardless of your access to insurance. If you or someone you know is suffering from addiction, call 1-800-662-HELP. Recovery starts with a call.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
The Sweet Treat Hut is the highest-rated juice bar in Philly, located on the corner of 50th and Thompson Streets, providing delicious, healthy vegan food, juices, and smoothies. Treat yourself to a cup of happiness. Call 215-877-1471.
The Black Words Book Club. WURD Radio's new monthly conversation on books that explore the African American experience through social, economic, and environmental justice issues. Tune in the second Tuesday of every month on Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro, 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. For April, WURD Radio is partnering with the Free Library of Philadelphia and showcasing their pick for its annual citywide reading program, One Book, One Philadelphia, entitled The Tradition by Jericho Brown. Be sure to listen live, as Nick Taliaferro will hold a contest for short giveaway book bundle that consists of 4 titles from Kensington's Dafina's Authors of Color's newest release. Don't miss it. Tuesday, April 13th on Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Attention for Word members. Get your copy and receive a 20% discount when you purchase at Harriet's Bookstore or Hakeem's Bookstore. For more information on the Black Words Book Club, visit wordradio.com. The Black Words Book Club is sponsored by Dafina. Dafina is an imprint of Kensington Publishing Corporation, America's independent publisher, concentrating on authors of color.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back. I do apologize for that. I didn't do as deep a vetting of that particular guest that was just on. So I did want to get into a conversation, and I think we should have a conversation about medical racism and medical bias and medical violence against Black people that has been going on for centuries. So we should have that conversation. But, once again, that should not prevent us from getting through this pandemic and doing the correct, or making the correct step, which is getting 85% of the population inoculated, so we can get to a level of immunity where the pandemic can officially end. So I apologize for that. I actually did not anticipate that the guest would come on and start having a conversation that would, and I typically, we don't support those kinds of conversations here on this program. You do know that, but I was allowing, or I was thinking that there would be a conversation focused primarily on medical racism, which is a conversation I want to have, but it kind of went off in another direction. I just had to cut it off. So I do apologize for that. I agree with you, Raphael Suleiman, who was saying just, make sure you have to do your homework with every guest, and you have to vet the guest thoroughly. You do in a lot of occasions, and sometimes we get a heavy amount of guests on this program. So we do some vetting. We do quite a bit of vetting, and I didn't do it as deeply, or I wasn't prepared to get that kind of conversation and language with that previous guest. So that's on me. That's my fault. My apologies for that, and having to expose you to a little bit of that. So I'm sorry. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. But you do notice from kind of the level of conversation we were having, and as he's trying to, kind of give his perspective or view on the pandemic that we're in and on issues like vaccine, you notice it's hard for him. And I've had interactions with folks who are kind of on the other side of that issue. It's hard for them to answer like direct questions. Like they don't have a whole lot of facts, if any, to support the claims that they make. And so it's always like I have a lot of these conversations off record and off air. Kind of going through that process of vetting. There's been a couple of conversations I could have had on this program that I didn't have because I was just concerned about the level of misinformation, disinformation that they were spreading. So, and it can be difficult, but sometimes I have those conversations off air. I have email exchanges, and it's hard for them to they can't give you a study, they can't give you a verified or credible medical institution or other credible folks within the scientific community to back their claims. It's just hard for them to do. It was hard for them to do just now when I put them on the spot.